So, hi. We'll start with the opening prayers. If you want to bring them up, you don't have these, right? No. And you can listen and follow. Okay. I pay homage with my body, speech, and mind filled with devotion to all Buddhas without exception, those lion-like heroes of the past, present, and future who dwell in all worlds throughout the universe. With the power of these aspirations for excellent conduct, I bow before all victorious ones as they manifest to my mind, prostrating with as many bodies as there are atoms in the universe. I envision that there are countless Buddhas abiding on every atom in the universe, each surrounded by hosts of bodhisattvas, completely pervading the basic space of phenomena. With never-ending praises sung to an ocean of melodies, I extol the perfect qualities of all victorious ones who have arrived at a state of bliss. I offer to all these victorious ones sublime flowers, garlands, music, and balms, beautiful parasols, brilliant lamps, the purest incense, the finest clothes and loveliest fragrances, vessels filled with sweet-scented powders piled as high as the king of mountains, the finest, most exalted array of all excellent things. I offer these as well to all the Buddhas. With the power of my faith in excellent conduct and my devotion to the Buddhas, I pay homage and present them with vast, unsurpassable offerings. I confess each and every negative action of my body, speech, and mind that I have committed under the influence of desire, anger, and ignorance. I rejoice in the meritorious deeds of Buddhas throughout all directions, as well as bodhisattvas, pratyeka Buddhas, arhats beyond training, those still in training, and all beings. I request that those lamps of the world, the protectors who, free of attachment, have attained the enlightened state of Buddhahood, turn the wheel of the unsurpassable Dharma. I join my hands and beseech those who may wish to pass beyond all suffering to remain for as many eons as there are atoms in the universe in order to bring benefit and happiness to all beings. I dedicate whatever virtue I have accumulated through prostrating, offering, and confessing, through rejoicing, requesting, and supplicating, however slight this virtue may be, to the enlightenment of all. The earth is perfumed with scented water, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, and the sun and moon. By my imagining and offering this as a Buddha realm, may all beings come to enjoy the pure realms. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamneryatayami. To fulfill the needs of all beings at their various levels of understanding, we request that you turn the wheel of Dharma, including the lesser and greater, common and extraordinary approaches. So I am reminding myself and reminding you of the way to listen to these teachings, and that is that having this aspiration that all beings throughout the reaches of space become free of suffering and attain the state of enlightenment. And in order for that to occur, in order for that to happen, I am now listening to the teachings on the Bodhicharyāvatāra, and will implement them as best as I can in order to fulfill my aspirations for all sentient beings, myself and all sentient beings. Of course, this attitude, attitude of bodhicitta, aspiration and active or engaging bodhicitta, is in this chapter. This is what we are to be mindful of. This is the main point of both the 4th chapter and this 5th chapter, that in order to not let that bodhicitta, that aspiration and engaging bodhicitta mind, motivation, in order to not lose it, or in order to not lose it, then these are the practices that will ensure that we don't lose our bodhicitta. I'm sure we've all heard many times from the Lamas when we go and have complain about our practice, complain about our life, this, that, and the other thing. By and large, and of course, Chakta Rinpoche was very famous for simply reminding us that it's the motivation. That's what's missing. That's what's making all these issues and obstacles manifest, is our motivation. We forgot our motivation. And so here, as it says at the beginning of this chapter, we need to, through implementing, through us developing the kind of the muscles of mindfulness and introspection, we become our teacher. We are the ones who, we need to become independent practitioners and that occurs through mindfulness and the development of mindfulness and introspection, and of course, avoiding carelessness, being heedful. These three factors, three qualities that have to do with our mental ability. If we don't have, if we're careless, mindless, and lack any sort of self-awareness, we can, through implementing and reflecting and contemplating these verses, we can develop it. If we have, regardless of our level of mindfulness and introspection and heedfulness, then through contemplating and reflecting and analyzing and trusting these verses, then our mindfulness and awareness and carefulness can develop very, very wonderfully. Because that is the whole message here, and having it occur here at this particular point in the whole text as the 4th and 5th chapters. Then when we talk about mindfulness, we're talking about, of course, mindfulness has to do with not losing an object of attention, remembering. And so here the object, although maybe here the object is bodhicitta, this fragile, just arisen bodhicitta, this tenuous and very fragile bodhicitta. That's what we are to be mindful of. That's why we should be heedful, and that's why we cultivate introspection, this kind of panoramic awareness to know whether or not we're mindful, and to correct when we do lose our mindfulness. You could say, like, this introspection, this particular chapter of introspective, what is it, vigilant introspection, or introspective or awareness, is a protector. It's like having a protector. It's a mental ability that we have to notice whether or not we're mindful. Being mindful means having bodhicitta motivation. Having bodhicitta motivation when you're practicing meditation, having bodhicitta motivation when you're not practicing meditation, having bodhicitta when you're brushing your teeth, when you're starting your car, when you're just rolling out of bed, when you're about to fall asleep. Mindfulness of bodhicitta and introspection of whether or not you are mindful of bodhicitta is what is being taught here as a way to not corrupt or lose that bodhicitta which has been aroused, okay? So it's, I'm pushing that so that we understand the context of these teachings. It's not a doctrine. This isn't like Buddhism particularly, like we need to learn Buddhism, but these are mental faculties that we either don't have or do have, depending on whether we've learned how to develop them. All sentient beings have Buddha nature, but it's not the case that everyone will awaken to realizing the significance of their own mind's nature. To do that, to awaken to that, requires, amongst other things, mindfulness, heedfulness, and introspection. That's why, for whatever merit we have as human beings have the capacity, if they learn, if they have the merit, to develop out of, to go from 0 to 100 in developing mindfulness, heedfulness, and vigilant introspection and introspection. That's why it's our opportunity and freedoms we have as humans is called precious. Or I should say, if we make our agenda as a human to become more careful with our body, speech, and mind, to develop bodhicitta and to be mindful of bodhicitta and to develop this conscientiousness, this awareness, then that is called the precious human birth, precious human opportunity. Beings that are far too distracted and overwhelmed by their experience and the ripening of their karma have no opportunity to develop these mental qualities. Beings that are have too much pleasure, too much success, are unlikely to develop these qualities. And so, as again, the first three chapters are how to give rise to bodhicitta when it has not yet arisen. And then the second section of 3 chapters, the 4th, 5th, 6th, are how not to lose bodhicitta, which reading into that, the order of this, to read into that indicates that we're going to lose it after we've given rise to it. We're going to forget it, ignore it, or be overwhelmed with other things, other habits. It's not that ingrained of a habit yet. And so this is how to develop these ability to maintain one's bodhicitta. Again, in the subsequent chapter of how to bring bodhicitta to fruition, then like the 8th chapter is the chapter on meditation. And so then mindfulness and introspection are used in the development of the various meditations that are taught, which would then be the object to be mindful of. Here at this phase, or at this stage of bodhicitta development, the object is aspiration and engaging bodhicitta, thoughts of bodhicitta, also renunciation and impermanence and precious human birth and karma, all the kind of the associated accurate facts of life that will support and further our bodhicitta. So we're up now to the 34th verse of the 5th chapter. Which has more than the previous. We were talking about how there are different sections, the benefits of mindfulness and introspection, the disadvantages of not having mindfulness and introspection. And if we have studied those and they've become familiar to us, then immediately when we notice that we don't have bodhicitta, that ground of noticing that, well, this is disadvantageous to me, will come easily. And then that will empower you to separate yourself from that distraction and bring forth again this motivation to attain enlightenment for the benefit of sentient beings and compassion and understanding of Dharma according to your level of understanding. So it's important to understand from the previous and reflect on those verses in order to have the foundation of understanding the benefits and the disadvantages. Here, from 34 on, are the specific practices of using mindfulness and introspection as a component of mind training, training the mind in bodhicitta. And the first 4 or 5 verses are concerned with avoiding negativity. As we mentioned earlier, this text is really the bodhisattva path that outlines the path according to the 6 paramitas, the 6 transcendent conducts of a bodhisattva, And the first paramita of generosity was taught in the 2nd chapter. And so now these 2 chapters have to do with discipline. Mindfulness, introspection, and heedfulness, carefulness are all the teachings on the paramita of discipline. And so, of course, one of the in the teachings on the paramitas, the 3 kinds of discipline are avoiding or renouncing negative actions, engaging in positive actions, and third is engaging in, or third is benefiting sentient beings. And so there's all the specifics of what negative actions to avoid and so forth, and what positive actions are and so forth. But here, because this is a practical manual, it's how to practice the paramitas of discipline. And so in the 34th verse here, it makes a general statement. If at the outset, when I check my mind, I find that it is tainted with some fault, so I shall be still and self-possessed, unmoving like a piece of wood. What we reflect on here is that of course, Shantideva is using the first person here. So Shantideva, especially here, we can see just how unbelievably scrupulous Shantideva was and the level that he expected of himself. And so even though I like to think of this text as a practice manual, things to reflect on and try to tease out what is he getting at as far as my practice goes, and how can I implement that, and thing like that. But also you can't help but be impressed or inspired by his scrupulousness. I don't think of a better word, but he set the bar very high for himself. And so just emulating him, maybe people who pick this up and read it think of it as a very interesting poem or something, and this man was very inspiring, but so even if we're left with that, but here he's talking about that we should, before we do anything, before we engage physically or verbally at any time, we should first look at our mind and see what is its condition. This is introspection. We should be introspective and notice and aware. Use that sort of panoramic awareness to notice, okay, what is my mind? What's my motivation? What is my mind thinking? How is it? What is it? Almost like the way a farmer goes out in the morning and checks the sky, okay, what kind of a day is it going to be? And so try and see what's in your mind. And if you see that it has some fault, then don't do anything. Just wait, just stop and don't act. I shall be still and self-possessed. My speech and my body will be still, and and then I'm moving like a piece of wood. We just drop our negative thought and settle into kind of a non-conceptual frame of mind, through relaxing our mind, like loosening the grip, releasing that negative thought, and then just relaxing in a state of non-thought, or arousing bodhicitta, like dispensing of that and having your mind give rise to this mind of the Dharma, basically some aspect of Dharma, some virtuous thought, some compassionate, loving, generous, devotional thought, something that frees you from actions of body and speech that are motivated by negative intentions. So you can change those thoughts into virtuous thoughts, and then act, then speak. That's very challenging, but that's the gist of mind training here, is always notice before you, what is it? Before, what is that old expression? Before, like make sure your mind is in gear before, or make sure your mind is, what is that? Before, make sure your mind is engaged before putting your mouth in gear. I think that thing. Something, anyway, that's the idea here, that it puts you in control. In other words, take control of your mind, and then your body and speech will follow. And you won't embarrass yourself or have regrets, or just get completely swept away from your noble intention of benefiting others. And this next here, he's talking about this next couple of verses, a few verses here, is focused on the are about how we should use our eyes. The eyes are kind of a window of to our mind, kind of a gateway of the mind. He said, I shall never vacantly allow my gaze to wander all around, but rather with a focused mind, I will always go with eyes cast down. So our mind, our eyes there's a connection between our eyes and our kleshas, our afflictions. You can see, like if we're angry, it's seen. It's seen through our eyes. If we have desire, our eyes project that. And so by limiting our gaze, then we limit our kleshas. We put a boundary on our kleshas. If we just let our eyes do their thing, then our kleshas will create a big background, and then we're gone. Then we're speech and mind are being negatively influenced, and this has to do with, of course, this verse refers to whether we're sitting on a cushion and doing like a formal meditation or not. It's not just for meditation, but just in general, we should just be aware of where we're going and be aware of our mind, what state our mind is in. Not just where we are, but then when we move. Of course, we shouldn't. Also, it's in the commentary mentions how we shouldn't assume the gaze of a meditator in such a way that we would be, what do you call that, like showing off, putting a facade of being a very collected person by not that. Cast down means specifically in front of you and down. There's many teachings about the eyes in the Dharma practice. So if you're sleepy, or if you're meditating and your mind is kind of dull, or if you're not meditating somewhere, formally, or if you're just sleepy and you don't want to be, it's not appropriate, or something, then you would lift your gaze up or look up at the sky. And if your mind is very, very agitated, then you would drop your gaze quite far down. These are taught. Sometimes if you're practicing more like non-conceptual practice, and your gaze is always fixed in one spot, then you might be taught that there's the teachings also. I'm not teaching them, but there's also talks on changing the gaze. Sometimes our state of mind is so locked into, that our mind is so locked into our gaze that we can't meditate if our gaze moves. So we're taught, okay, meditate looking with your eyes looking to the right. Okay, now meditate looking with your eyes to the left for a session or something like that. So there's many teachings, but here it's maintaining this eyes in that way. And then, as he says, but that we might get tired of that. It might be tiresome to keep our eyes focused. And so he says then, but that I might relax my gaze, sometimes I'll raise my eyes and look around. And when you do that, then you would do it in sync with your mindfulness and awareness. Okay, now my eyes are looking this way. What is my mind? Always bring your bring your mindfulness and awareness with you as you look around. And if there's people standing in my sight, I'll look at them and greet them with a friendly word. Wow, okay, so suddenly you're not in your own little introspective world and you run into somebody. And it's taught here that you should always be ready with a very affectionate, outgoing and affectionate and loving gaze towards someone that's coming your way. Whether or not they're looking at you or not, that's how you should react to others. They are those who you are intent on liberating from suffering and the causes of their suffering. So those are your friends. could say. And greet, if you can, then if whatever the convention is, then greet them. Like they say, bodhisattvas always say hello first. You don't wait for somebody to say hello to you and then say hello back. But you should be the one to initiate hello, whatever the, namaste or whatever it is, Probably namaste we shouldn't necessarily use, but in some circumstances, I think the commentary says something like that, tashi dele, namaste. But, hello, whatever the circumstances, whatever the convention is. But we should never pass someone in this fashion. We should never ignore others. Yeah, we shouldn't ignore others. We should always be interested in making affectionate connections with others. Then 37, and yet to spy the dangers on the road, I'll scrutinize the four directions one by one. Okay, so then if we're going into, if we have to cross the street, or we're going into a busy, like a store or something, we have to go through a check stand or things like that, then you'll look around and attentively and apply your mindfulness, making sure that your mind is still maintaining this good motivation. And when I stop to rest, I'll turn around and look behind me back along my way. I guess there's there's over 250 vows of a monk, and then there's like maybe 100 more for women, for nuns. And of course they have different, some like killing, that's, there's the top 5 and the top 10. And then there's different levels of infractions to those. And in the Bodhisattva, I guess in the Bodhisattva, in the real scrupulous teachings, like monks and people that are bodhisattvas who are walking, when you want to look around to where you came from, you have to turn your whole body. You stop and turn. You don't rubberneck. You don't turn just your head. That's not in keeping with being mindful, because you're walking. And being mindful of walking means you're being mindful of where you're walking. So you don't, if you want to turn, like he's referring here to stop, to rest, and then you turn your body and look. So then I will survey the land in front, behind, and carry on, or else retrace my steps. In every time, in every place, therefore, I'll know my needs and act accordingly. So basically, we can apply that to our own. I always have this vision of a monk just slowly walking down a dirt path, But it's, it's got to be practical for us. So wherever we may be, we should always weigh what will further my Dharma practice, what will further the happiness of others, what will be in accord with what I understand of the Dharma. We should always weigh that as we make our decisions and not act without a purpose. I'll know my needs and act accordingly. My needs not just my needs, but also the needs of others. It was commented on, including not just one's own needs, but others' needs. What would make others happy? That's how I will act. And so then verse 39, it says, my body shall remain like this. So wherever we are, wherever we happen to be, then we should be mindful of our physical presence and say, okay, this is how I will sit. This is how I will stand. That's here. So decide consciously how your body will appropriately be placed. Say it like that. And then remain still and calm in that situation. Embarking thus upon a given course, from time to time I'll verify, inquiring how my body is disposed. So we should check. Has my body moved? And so we employ our mindfulness and introspection in that way. So that we reduce our fidgeting. Basically, it's about fidgeting. Should stay calm and relaxed, like a bodhisattva posture. We sit composed like a lion. And when we walk, a bodhisattva walks, they walk calm and dignified like an elephant. So we should always be aware of our body, and this is about the body here, eyes and the rest of the body, and so that we can be assured of being at ease, like a bodhisattva. And we're beginning bodhisattvas, so it's not, I'm not misusing it in that sense. Like first, Shanti, according to Shantideva's teachings, then as soon as you take the bodhisattva, the bodhicitta vow, give rise to bodhicitta, then you are a bodhisattva. And so bodhisattvas should be at ease with oneself and your surroundings. Okay. Okay, then this rampant elephant, okay, now this is a different kind of elephant, not the calm and dignified elephant, but the drunk, rampant elephant, my mind, once tied to that great post, reflection on the teachings, must now be watched with all my strength that it might never slip away. Okay, so now speaking in general terms about mindfulness, and this mind, as we discussed extensively previously, this mind like an open wound, and it's so subjected to afflictions, major and minor, not minor, the major afflictions of desire, anger, ignorance, and jealousy, and pride, and envy. And then the secondary, the 20 secondary afflictions that we should be mindful of when they arise. There's a rampant elephant. You know, I think the elephant, if you have a rampant elephant, they can destroy a whole house. They can destroy a whole village. You get a bunch of rampant elephants. They're just they're big size, huge. And that's just like our emotions, our afflictions, our kleshas. We get worked up. We get worked up out of desire and attachment. We get worked up out of jealousy. We get worked up out of hatred, anger. We get worked up out of pride. And it's like a rampant elephant. It just destroys everything in its path. Destroys your mind, destroys your speech, our bodies, our friends, everyone. It affects, it's contaminating. So we need to tie it to that great post, which is mindfulness, and reflect on the teachings. Reflect on your physical behavior, your speech, your mind, your state of mind, and recollect the teachings of the view, the teachings of the path. Know where you are, know where you are on the path and what you should be doing, so that you can reflect on that and then engage and be mindful of that. And reflect on what you're studying. Call to mind the teachings of the Bodhicharyāvatāra. Don't let your mind go on a rampage. So it must be watched with all my strength. So strengthen your mindfulness, strengthen your introspection, so that it won't slip away, that mindfulness won't slip away, your mind will slip away and drag you down to the realms of suffering. Okay, then the next verse says, those who strive to master concentration should never for an instant be distracted. So now we're talking about those who are diligently involved with attaining concentration. In other words, focusing on an object, focusing on bodhicitta, and using all your power and all your virtue and all your actions of body, all your actions of speech, and all your actions of all your mental actions. So everything should be concentrating on that and not distracted by anything other than bodhicitta. And they should always watch their minds inquiring, where is now my mind engaged? What am I doing? What's my mind thinking? What am I involved with? Am I involved with bodhicitta, or am I involved with anxiety or fear or hatred or confusion or what? Future, tomorrow, yesterday? Always this introspective. It's like it's intelligence. And then bring it back. Bring your mind back to bodhicitta. Distractions. Sometimes now you'll probably begin to notice perhaps that you hardly ever think of bodhicitta, even when you're mindful of bodhicitta, because you're just always distracted. And that's, it's not that you're more distracted because of being mindful. You're just mindful of what always has been the case, but there hasn't been a control group. There hasn't been something that you've been expecting yourself to pay attention to. So now we pay attention to some aspect of bodhicitta, some aspect of virtue, of dharma, and then here it says concentrate, meaning be mindful, kind of pin your mind to it, but not 100%. Leave maybe 40%, 30% of your mind to notice whether or not you are paying attention to your motivation. That's your introspective aspect. This we need to learn the distinction. The mindfulness is where you pin your mind to something. And then this introspection, we need to leave space for that to occur, kind of the overseer. It's like if you were watching a whole room full of children playing, you had a responsibility for young kids, kindergarten, and you have to not take your eyes off of them sort of as a group. But you have to be spacious. You have to notice if you're paying attention, you get too fixated on this one, then you're going to lose this one, this group over here, or this one, they're going to wander off. So you have to, it's just like driving a car maybe. We should actually be very good at this. You know? We need to like really focus on where we're headed, but then also left side, right side, back side, pedestrians, this kind of scope. We can't be just fixated. It's like a new driver. You know, they compensate for that lack of introspection by driving really slow. You know, and they put a sticker, excuse me, I'm a beginner, you know, because they're driving really slow. But as you get more agile and more familiar with driving, then you have that ability to encompass a lot more space, to know, basically to know what's going on around you more, not just forward. So it's like that. Speaking of distractions, okay, we have this ongoing sense of bodhicitta, this kind of a very compassionate concern for others, a wish for them to attain enlightenment, and then we notice that's history. We're thinking of something else completely, like lunch, or something, you know, you want, oh, I don't know if I did that right, or oh no, I have to do this later, and you know, and there's a whole gap that we missed. See, we don't, distractions, we only notice distractions after the fact. We never, like say, you don't notice distractions right when they happen, isn't it? You always notice distractions later, after you've already been distracted. And the more I don't know, the more familiar we are with a distraction, the more comfortable we are with it. And so time, before we realize it, can be a very long time. Because it's just me, it's my life. And we're so used to it, it's not a distraction. It's just, you know, but I'm distracted from, you know, excellent conduct, from bodhicitta practice. So the point here is to be diligent at cultivating this introspection coupled with mindfulness to shorten that time. Don't be depressed or give up. Just a complete reset again and again and again. When you're in the teachings in the meditation chapter, chapter 8, when it talks about shamatha, calm abiding, which, like if we're focused on impermanence or on the doctrine, the topics involved with causation, karma, and cause and effect, or with bodhicitta or love and compassion, the longer we stay on track with that, then that's shamatha comes. It's an object, and so that in the practice of meditating here, which it says, those who strive to master concentration. So he's kind of opened up that topic a little bit here. And so in meditation here, there's different, practices within a practice, or how the stages of developing concentration, or the stages of developing shamatha or one-pointedness. First is to pin your mind to an object. And if you, with introspection, which is, I don't know, like a lot of mindfulness practices that's taught now, I don't want to necessarily get into this, but it's really about maintaining that mindfulness. But in our tradition of meditation, this introspection is actually becomes more and more important as our mindfulness matures. Then this introspection it doesn't occupy, say, 30%, because our mindfulness is stronger and we're less distracted, so our awareness increases. So then we're down to maybe 50% awareness and 50% mindfulness. And then as mindfulness is our ability to avoid distraction gets greater, then this introspection goes, 60, 80, 90%, like that. So, but the first point is to learn to pin your mind, stick your mind on the object. If it's love and compassion, or aspiration, bodhicitta, as a kind of a feeling or something like that, then you'll get distracted. And then you recognize that, and then bring your mind back to the object, like reset. So there's setting, placing, it's called placement. You place your mind on an object, set your mind on an object, and then reset it. And then when you reset, then there's continue. Okay, I'm back. Now there's the next second, and then the next second, and the next second. So mind is that's how we develop mindfulness. And awareness is what notices when you've been distracted. And that also has the power to bring you back. So it's this combination. There's nothing wrong with being distracted. Matter of fact, when you're distracted, then your awareness brightens. Oh, I'm thinking about that. My deal was I was going to be thinking about that. So then you bring it back. And so this process of resetting is very kind of beautiful in a way if you don't get all upset or depressed about it, because you keep doing it like hundreds of times. You might think, oh, if I didn't meditate, I think I'd be much more relaxed. But that's not the case. All this is going on anyway. All these afflictions and all the kleshas they're all kind of bubbling like a a mountain that's like a volcano that hasn't blown yet. And then one remark, one raised eyebrow, and boom, everything, all your contrived calm is blown apart. Okay, so here, where is my mind engaged? 42 says, when this becomes impossible, which is very kind of Shantideva, so such a relief. When this is impossible, in other words, when this becomes impossible in case of danger or festivity, I'll act as it seems best. So I'll act seems best here is qualified by I'll act in accord with my understanding of bodhicitta and what's not in conflict with the Dharma. And danger means like when we get scared, when we're afraid. And festivities also can refer to like ringing bells and playing drums. That's music, that's you take vows that's one of the top 10, that's the 7th and 8th vows. No dancing, no singing, no gaming, no music, no listening, no playing music. But so in puja, then in celebrations, then we play music, and we even have dancing, Lama, dancing and acting and drama in our practice, and we wave our arms. That's the monks. In a monk, those infractions to don't wave your arms around. That's in the previous one. It was talking about comportment in our body. We shouldn't wave our arms around. So then here we're doing mudras and all kinds of mudras and things. So then at that time we do it, but then it's always with mindfulness and awareness, and noticing what is my mind doing. Is my mind being occupied by bodhicitta? For it is taught that rules of discipline, meaning lesser rules of discipline, may be relaxed in times of generosity. Not the important rules, or not the important training, like killing, stealing, things like that. Minor rules like that we were talking about. Okay, then 43, when something has, these two, 43 and 44 go together here. This is, I'm just going to read this. When something has been planned and started on, for instance, I'm going to study the Bodhicharyāvatāra, like that. So attention should not drift to other things. Oh, this one, this also, this here, this is, this. With thoughts fixed on the chosen target, that and that alone should be pursued. Behaving in this way, all tasks are well performed, and nothing is achieved by doing otherwise. Shouldn't, if thus we act, the secondary defilement, lack of introspection, will not grow. So going from one thing to the other like that, then neither task is accomplished. And then particularly here, it says this lack of introspection will not grow. So lack of introspection, if you remember from the heedfulness chapter, and I'm going to point you in that direction again, because we need, there's a secondary secondary clashes. Like I mentioned, the major ones like attachment, aversion, and stupidity, and then pride and jealousy, like those. And then there's the 20 secondary afflictions, clashes. And so this lack of introspection is one. And it's mentioned here in this piece of advice about if we just go from one thing to another, it's one job, and just, what was that called? If we're just desultory in our worldly life and in our Dharma life, if we do it in a kind of a desultory hodgepodge way, we will become a victim of a lack of introspection, and nothing will be accomplished. Desultory, like if you sweep up a room in a desultory way, it's not going to get clean. You start here, and you go over here, and then you go over here, then you go over here. You keep changing. That's called desultory, I believe. So we want this mindfulness and introspection. We want to grow. Okay, then 45 is kind of this section on how to protect these precepts from degeneration. If you find yourself engaged in different kinds of pointless conversation and curious sights, the like of which abound, be rid of all delight and taste for them. So often, for a bodhisattva, we interact with others with a kindness and with a wish and aspiration for their happiness, temporary happiness and ultimate happiness. That's bodhicitta. That's bringing bodhicitta there. And so in doing so, with that intention, we visit people who are sick, we babysit children, for goodness sake, we do all kinds of things. And we watch movies or play games, charades. I don't know if people play charades anymore, but we play games as a way of making people happy. That's we come to where people are. If you're with a sick person, then you do something that will bring a sick person happiness or health or well-being, and you do it with that bodhicitta aspiration, and you're engaging, you're practicing generosity, but not losing the discipline of bodhicitta by being attached to it. And don't turn it into something for your own benefit, but always keep it as a way to benefit others. That's what that refers to. So, and if you find you're grubbing in the soil, which just means sort of like maybe with a stick or something, or just fooling around basically, or pulling up the grass or tracing idle patterns on the ground, remembering the precepts of the blissful one, in fear restrain yourself at once. So these fall into the category of minor infractions or minor precepts, where you shouldn't just doing things with no reason. You just can't refrain from fidgeting. So just remind yourself, when you find yourself doing that, then remind yourself of, be mindful. And a lot here, of course, here it says, in fear, refrain yourself, because he's speaking particularly as a monk, remembering the precepts of the Buddhas. So there was a reason why there's so many hundreds of precepts, even minor ones, and for a bodhisattva, as you learn about in the first few chapters here, for someone to have a negative attitude towards a bodhisattva is very harmful. To cause someone to lose faith in the Dharma, for a bodhisattva to do something that causes someone to lose faith in the Dharma, for the bodhisattva is very tragic, is very catastrophic for the bodhisattva who causes someone to lose faith in the Dharma because of their actions. And so sitting around grubbing in the soil and pulling up grass and doing idle patterns are maybe referring to something like that, that people think you're just sort of a layabout. Like it says in the previous section, my body shall remain like this. Be calm and mindful of your motivation and your intention or your contemplations. Reflect on the Dharma. Small transgressions cause others to doubt, and they also, small transgressions lead to greater transgressions. It's a form of laziness. One kind of laziness is clinging to negative actions, being attracted to and clinging to negative actions. So that's what that's referring to. Anyway, you can reflect on that on your own terms also, but that's the idea. That's the idea. Unless you have the wisdom to know why you're doing something, we always should avoid doing something that will cause others to lose faith. We should always avoid, did I say avoid? We should always avoid doing actions that will cause others to lose faith. Also, be careful that you don't do it to avoid your own vanity being undermined, Like you want to be known as a perfect Dharma practitioner, so you put yourself in this kind of straitjacket of life, and like you're in this straitjacket, so that that's not the same thing. Again, we should be calm and at ease and relaxed and attentive and notice our mind and always be mulling over the Dharma. Then our physical actions and our speech will be appropriate to the situation. Okay, then when the next 47 says, when you feel the wish to move about, so you have an interest in traveling or moving your arms even, anytime you want to move in a big way or a minor way, or even to express yourself in speech, first examine what's in your mind. Look for your motivation Is it based on bodhicitta, or is it out of your own self-interest? For steadfast ones should act correctly, that is to say, with good reason. So reject negative actions, perform virtuous actions, and act in ways that will benefit others according to your capacity. Usually, we feel uncomfortable, and then we think up some way to relieve that discomfort. And then we desire something, and if we have the merit and the merit, then we get it. Like we're tired, and then we sit down. We have the merit to have a place to sit that's comfortable, and then we sit down, and then we start to get uncomfortable, like something missing. It's getting boring, or something's missing, or some kind of discomfort. And so we think of something to add. So we make a cup of tea, or a beer, or a glass of wine, or something. And then we get that. And then we drink that. And then again, that exhausts itself. And then again, we look for some way to relieve the discomfort, or the boredom, or the fear, or the agitation. And we're constantly moving between some form of suffering and some form of what's called defiled bliss. It's called defiled bliss. It's something that provides happiness only temporarily. And at the end of its ability to provide happiness, there's always the reoccurrence of suffering. And so here it says, when you feel the wish to move about or express yourself, first examine what's in your mind. For steadfast ones should act correctly. So that idea, don't always be looking for defiled bliss. It's called defiled bliss. It could mean just a glass of water, but it's something that comes, but it's very temporary, because it's the karmic result of some virtue that was temporary. You act in a virtuous way, and then the fruition of that will occur, and that duration of that fruition, that form of comfort, will last and be as intense as the duration of it, and the intensity of the joy or bliss that it produces will be in accord with the cause, what caused it. But when we experience the relief of our suffering, then we become attached to that result, that fruit of virtue. And because it was based on virtue that was dualistic, good as that act might have been, there was still an actor, an agent performing an act in relationship to something else, object, action, and subject. So it's dualistic, and anything that originates from duality is corrupt, is defiled. It's defiled by duality. And so it has a lifespan, that happiness. And when that lifespan ends, it changes to suffering. But in the meantime, you've developed attachment for it. So now you're taking the results of a virtuous action and you are creating negative karma by becoming attached to and maybe lying or cheating or fighting off any expectation or fear that that happiness will end. You try to prolong it and increase it. And in doing that, you create negative actions that have the results of suffering down the line. So we need to be very useful, very we need to be very useful with our happiness and use it in a dharma purpose, mentally and verbally and physically. Okay. I will start this next, this verse 48. There's 6 or 7 verses here that deal with what are called the 27 sources of mistaken, or 27 sources that give rise to mistaken conduct. So we should know these, we should remember them. Shantideva itemizes here, but I will, you can refer back to this teaching about it. So that I think if you were, if this was an official, not official, if this was a kind of a class, Shedra or a study class or something, this would be, okay, what are the 27 causes of defiled actions? Those, and you should know these, because that's what we're supposed to know these so that we know what to be mindful of. If we don't know what to be mindful of, then we need to learn, or else what will we be mindful of? Our bodhicitta will dissolve. So if we can remember these, then the downfalls to our bodhicitta won't occur. You won't have to have somebody, you won't have to like hire a trainer to accompany you at all times saying, what's your mind doing now? What's your motivation? Where's your mind? We're doing that. That's an introspection. Is even if you have a Dharma name, even you can just say, oh, okay, Pema such and such, how are you doing? Talk to yourself like that, out loud even, if you're by yourself. Or even not, you can do it. A lot of people talk to themselves now. You can just put earbuds in and people will think you're on a phone call and say, oh, what did you do that for? You shouldn't have done that, don't you know? No one will, it's a different world now. So, but that's the idea, is to develop that introspection. The power of introspection is to basically, notice and converse with yourself about how you're doing in regards to your mindfulness. Oh, did you notice that you were just irritated by that? Then we shorten the space between, or we shorten the duration of a distraction. Well, okay, this starts out here. Okay, we'll just do this verse. When the urge arises in your mind to feelings of desire or angry hate, do not act, be silent, do not speak, and like a log of wood, be sure to stay. So, of course, these are familiar, but these are the first 2 of this group of sources of that give rise to negative body, speech, and mind conduct. And it's attachment for what we like, or hatred for what we don't like, friends, enemies, this kind of thing. So when those feelings arise, then don't continue them. Like we said before, either just relax and settle into a restful non-thought state, and then develop bodhicitta. You might, try this on your cushion with something easy. Not when you're like listening to the news. Then you need to muscle up, or use the news for that purpose, to notice how your mind is reacting and then drop it. That was extra. That was your kleshas that rose up. It could have been bodhicitta. It could have been an understanding of the suffering of samsara. And you could have deepen your understanding of the four thoughts that turn the mind, and deepen your, or make your bodhicitta respond, reactive there. Be like a log of wood. So don't allow your body, speech, and mind to run off under the influence of desire or angry. So these are the first two. And when your mind is wild or filled with mockery or filled with pride and haughty arrogance, or when you would expose another's secret guilt to bring up old dissensions or to act deceitfully, or when you want to fish for praise or criticize and spoil another's name, or use harsh language, sparring for a fight, it's then that like a log you should remain. So you can, these are the, there's 11 of them there. When your mind is wild, I mean frantic with some compulsion or attachment, and you lose your awareness of your body, speech, and mind. That's called wild. And then a mockery, meaning your mind is making fun of others. That's 3 and 4. And then pride. There's different kinds of pride. There's just plain pride that you have. Plain pride. It's pride like that you have an awareness that you're you. Somebody calls your name maybe, and you react because you know that you're you with that name. That kind of pride. And then there's pride. There's I don't know if I know them all, but then there's the pride of thinking that you're better than others when you're not, more accomplished. Oh, I could do better than that when you can't. Or then there's the pride of that you put yourself on the same level as someone who's quite like very superior. What is that called? Stellar. Like a very stellar person. Like you think of yourself as being that way. Or there's the pride. This is one. There's the pride of thinking that you're almost that stellar. Oh, I'm not that great, but I'm just below that pride. And then there's the pride of thinking you're the worst. And then there's the pride of, what is it called? Like a queen amongst equals, is the expression? She acts like a queen amongst equals. Everybody's the same, but you think you're better. Queen, I like that expression. That's a good expression. Yeah, pride. Anyway. And then arrogance, which is kind of a self-satisfaction, self-satisfied, like arrogance here, meaning like your family is, you have come from a great family, or you're very learned, or you're very beautiful, this kind of thing, very arrogant with that. Youthful, like those 70-year-old good-looking men and women on the cover of the ARP magazine, doing gardening and doing rock climbing and all this stuff, and they're all very like, oh, you don't have to grow old, you know, look how youthful this person is. It's nauseating. Okay, so then sometimes we have the urge to expose another person's flaws. Says expose another's secret guilt. Maybe somebody, of course, here, you know, as a monk, you know, or somebody breaks their vow, and you expose them specifically so that you become somebody who didn't have that fault. So you talk, you know, like politicians, they trash each other so that they feel better. I mean, we do that. Everybody does that, but that's a, I don't know. I'm not saying we do that, but that's a one of the 27 sources of that give rise to bad conduct. So again, these are the things to be mindful of. To bring up old dissensions, things, you know, sometimes you had an encounter or a situation with somebody, an experience, and it wasn't very good, but then it's all been worked out. And it's like, you know, everybody, you know, it's been resolved, but you have this itch to bring it up again. You're not content. You know, you're not content. You know, you have that old dissensions, it says. You have a kind of a, also it's kind of, some people are, you know, we have urges sometimes to become repeatedly irritating to people. Have an urge to irritate people repeatedly. To depress, to make other people depressed, this kind of thing. Or to act deceitfully. So to cheat, basically to cheat, to deceive. Or when you want to fish for praise. So you sort of have a desire, you have this urge to speak about yourself or about your group in order to elicit praise from others of your group's, your qualities or your group's qualities. Or criticize. So that one, fish for praise, that's one, that's number 10. And then, or criticize, to disparage someone. And spoil someone's name. That criticize and spoil someone's name, someone we don't like. We disparage them to spoil their name. or use harsh language, like insult, abusive language. Yeah, like that. Or always being confrontational. What is it called? Sparring for a fight, being confrontational, creating divisions. That's 12 and 13, language and sparring for a fight. So then, it's then that like a log you should remain. In other words, just do nothing. Again, just if you notice that in your mind, of course, we have these things. So then notice it and then just release it as soon as you can. Don't let it gather momentum and inform your speech or your behavior or grow in your mind. It's easy to antidote or release these urges if we catch them soon enough and through introspection, if we're mindful so that we notice them and we're introspective enough to know that they're harmful, that there's bodhicitta you should be thinking of, and these kind of things. See, mindfulness, when you lose mindfulness, you can just lose mindfulness, and then eventually you'll remember mindfulness. But in the meantime, you've done all this destruction. You've done all this, catastrophes in your mind. So this introspection pays attention to mindfulness. When you lose mindfulness, then that introspection will know what's going on. And if you've done your homework and have a basis in understanding the disadvantages of the kleshas, then it'll be very easy, because it's in your own, at this point, it's in your own interest to avoid or abandon these negative urges. They're not in harmony with your nature. So mental events that are in harmony with your nature, various forms, say, of virtue, for instance, always will outshine or outlive or outshine those negative mental habits that are not in harmony with your nature. Although I think the Dalai Lama said in some teaching how virtue will always beat non-virtue. Even though our virtue is very, not so much maybe. It always seems we always have to sort of force our virtue, but it will always, because it's in harmony with the path of awakening, it will always outshine our negative mental events. The point of practice is to get used to it. To get used to it. And we get used to it by wanting it. And we want it because we know the advantages of it, and we know the disadvantages of not having mindfulness and introspection. Again, it always, I keep going back to these analytical reflections. We need to really analyze. So if we can release and then just pause and just abide in a state of non-thought. Usually non-thought is not, we don't make a big deal out of, it's kind of not necessarily that virtuous or that, but it is, there is such a place, there is such a mind when there is no thought. And so once you abandon your thoughts, that negative thought, then just settle into kind of a non-thought state, and then arouse bodhicitta. Then turn your mind to the Dharma according to what you're familiar with. If you're not familiar, then it's tricky. It'll be, you could very well, from that non-thought, you could very well, again, be swept away by some negative thing. So you really need to gain familiarity with, what is it, learning, contemplating, and meditating. If we want to contemplate, then first we have to learn. And so learning means studying. So study the Dharma so that it becomes familiar. And the more familiar something is, the easier it is. Just like the more familiar we are with anger, the easier it is to get angry. We're creatures of habit. And to become free of habit, we have to have another habit. We have to find a new habit and become familiar with it, the Dharma, because the purpose of the Dharma is to become free of habits. Okay, so there's 13. You try and look in the book, see if you can find 13 there. Or you can review that later, but try to just kind of learn them, because they can be, we're very self-deceptive. We really deceive ourselves. Righteous indignation and all these kinds of things. We've got all kinds of language and all kinds of therapy language and things to fool us into taking non-virtue to be virtue. So we'll continue with the other 10, 23, 14, other 14 next time. Okay, wow. Okay, this next chapter is patience, which is about anger, But just now we're not halfway through this chapter yet. So by the time we get to the end of this chapter, I think we'll have a lot of patience already. We should be really ready for the hardball that Shantideva throws at us with the patience. Okay. So we'll dedicate the merit of your patience and listening. All the virtue of this practice and all that is gathered throughout the 3 times, I dedicate to all beings without exception, so that they may attain Buddhahood. Following and emulating the omniscient and courageous Manjushri, and likewise Samantabhadra, I completely dedicate all virtue. Since dedicating merit is praised as supreme by victorious ones of the 3 times, I completely dedicate these roots of virtue for the sake of practicing excellent conduct. May the teachings of Lord Buddha, the only source of benefit and happiness, long remain in this world. May the lives of those who uphold these teachings be as stable as a victory banner. Supreme Bodhicitta is so very precious. Where it has not yet arisen, may it arise. Where it has arisen, may it not decline, but evermore grow and flourish. Okay. So